Greetings, brothers and sisters in Christ. Today we are having to answer the question about the power of the Roman Catholic Church, specifically the power of the Pope. This is really an interesting question about whether or not this is actually, to me, this is actually a really interesting question regarding whether or not the papacy should have this kind of power over the nobility, the European nobility. I really like this question because I think the answer is kind of nuanced. Living today, postmodern, post-medieval, post-Latin Christian world is an interesting question coming from a non-Catholic perspective stance. Obviously, we're biased to say it was wrong. Obviously, we're biased to say that it was undue influence. But yet, today we see Christians, we see Protestants fighting for that same power. If there was a pastor that was invited by the president to speak to him on any issue of any kind, that pastor would go. If that pastor or a group of pastors, or say Man of Church, for example, was given the opportunity to draft a policy initiative of the current administration regarding sexuality, regarding child rearing, regarding marriage, anything. And a faculty would be hard pressed to turn that down. We all want influence. We all want political influence, not for ourselves necessarily. The question goes towards the Pope. Should the Pope have had the power he had? Should he have done the things that he did? The bull, Unam Sanctam, meaning one holy, looking at that question today, as a Protestant, it seems ridiculous. There's one Christ. The Bible's crystal clear. There's one mediator between God and man. I feel that that's a very theological question. Historically speaking, I think this power was abused. I think this power was misplaced. I think when we look at the Council of Clermont, the Crusades, to me, are a more grievous error than the stance of the Unam Sanctam, because Christ is crystal clear that his kingdom is not built on violence. His kingdom is not built on war. He says it over and over. I'm not going to fight over this. The violent take the kingdom by force. This isn't a kingdom of war. I'm not setting up a kingship. I'm setting up a priesthood. When you really study it, Christ is our high priest, our intercessor, and his kingship will not be established until his return. Well, I think if there's anything that the church should be doing with its political power, it should be stopping oppression. To answer the question about should the papacy have that power, have the power that it had to do the things that it did, I don't think so. I think it was unbiblical. And ultimately, yes, I believe it did damage to the church. The result of trying to claim holiness, trying to claim an unquestionable loyalty, trying to demand absolute power, so to speak, the power to wage wars, the power to subject kings, and to not be questioned by anyone. When the Pope began to operate in the political sphere, he opened himself up to more more intense scrutiny. The church could become more intensely scrutinized. Its motives could be more intently scrutinized. And I think that did do damage to the church, because then in that way, it became no different than a political engine. It became no different than a institution of the state. And that would do damage both to the quality of the converts that would come into the faith. People might be enticed by it based on its power, be enticed to it based on its fear of disobedience, versus seeing the wonder of Christ and coming into it willingly. So the quality of the converts definitely would have been a challenging downside, as well as preventing other people from coming in, because now the Pope is picking enemies and saying, well, these Turks or these Muslims, these individuals are, they need to be killed because they stand against our power. Not necessarily our theology. That was an excuse. It was our power. We're going to defeat them with power because it's our power that's in danger, versus we need to convert them because they are wicked souls on their way to a godless eternity. We need to convert them with the power of our gospel and the goodness of our deeds. So yeah, I think it did damage. I think it did damage all the way down from the converts to the top, because it became a system of rewarding one another versus a system of seeking Christ first and loving one another and loving your enemies as yourself. So